Young alien girl fell hard for a human, he said, come back when you're older. So she did. Captain Rex Razorthorn stepped off the transport shuttle onto the dusty surface of Oceana, a forgotten speck in the vast expanse of space. The planet's twin amber moons hung low in the sky, casting an eerie glow over the settlement's ramshackle buildings. His black steel combat armor gleamed in the fading light, each piece a testament to battles fought and won across the galaxy. Captain Thorn, the colony administrator, a portly man with a perpetual sheen of sweat, hurried toward him. Thank the stars. You've arrived. The situation with the native insurgents has escalated beyond our control. Thorn nodded curtly. That's why command sent me. I'll need a full briefing and access to your security feeds. Of course, right this way. As they walked through the settlement, Thorn felt the weight of eyes upon him. The colonists, a mix of humans and various alien species, watched him with a mixture of hope and apprehension. He was used to it. The Galactic Peacekeeping Force didn't send someone with his reputation unless things had gone seriously wrong. The administrator led him to a squat building that served as the colony's headquarters. Inside, various officials were gathered around a holographic display of the surrounding terrain. The insurgents have been attacking our supply lines, the security chief explained. We've lost 3 transports in the last month alone. Thorn studied the map. Show me where the attacks occurred. As they discussed strategy, Thorn became aware of a presence behind him. He turned to find a young humanoid alien girl standing in the doorway, staring at him with unabashed fascination. She couldn't have been more than 16 by human standards, with long silvery hair that cascaded down her back and smooth orange skin that seemed to glow from within. Her bright eyes, the color of the morning sky, were fixed on him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable. Who's the kid? He asked the administrator. The men glanced over. Inside, that's one of the local Axionites, harmless but persistent. She has a fascination with off-worlders, especially humans. As if on cue, the girl approached, her simple beige mini dress swishing around her slender legs. Your Captain Thorn, she said, her voice melodic with an accent he couldn't quite place. I've heard stories about you. Is it true you single-handedly defeated the Draconian warlords at the Battle of Vega Prime? Thorn frowned. You shouldn't believe everything you hear, kid. I'm not a kid, she replied, lifting her chin defiantly. I'm 17 cycles old. Still a kid, he muttered, turning back to the map. Run along now, we've got work to do. Butra didn't leave. Instead, she hovered at the edge of the group, watching Thorn's every move with those unervingly bright eyes. Over the next few days, as Thorn established a security perimeter and began training the local militia, Ionra became his unwanted shadow. She followed him everywhere, peppering him with questions about Earth, about his missions, about the scars that marked his face and arms. Have you ever been in love, Captain Thorn? She asked one afternoon as he inspected the colony's defenses. Thorn snorted. Love's a luxury I can't afford, kid. I think that's sad, she said, skipping alongside him. Everyone deserves love. What would you know about it? He retorted. You're barely out of childhood. Her face fell, but only momentarily. I know more than you think. The pattern continued for a week. No matter where Thorn went, Iandra was there, watching him with those eager eyes hanging on his every word. The colonists seemed amused by her infatuation, but Thorn found it increasingly irritating. It came to a head on the 8th day. Thorn was preparing for a reconnaissance mission into insurgent territory when Ionra appeared at his side, dressed in what appeared to be her attempt at combat gear, a mismatched collection of protective padding over her usual dress. I'm coming with you, she announced. Thorn stared at her in disbelief. Like hell you are, I can help, she insisted. I know the terrain better than any of your scouts. This isn't a game, Ionra, he snapped, his patience finally exhausted. People die out there, real people with blood and guts that spill out when they're shot. I'm not afraid, she said, but her voice wavered slightly. Thorn grabbed her by the shoulders, forcing her to look him in the eyes. Listen to me, you're a child playing at being a soldier. This isn't some romantic adventure, it's war. It's ugly and brutal, and there's nothing glorious about it. Tears welled in her eyes, but she held his gaze. I just want to be near you for sake, Thorn growled, releasing her. You're too young for this kind of game. Come back when you've grown up, then we'll talk. The words hit her like a physical blow. She stepped back, her bright eyes dimming with hurt. Without another word, she turned and fled, her silver hair streaming behind her like a comet's tail. Thorn watched her go, a twinge of guilt gnawing at him, but he pushed it aside. He had a mission to complete, insurgents to neutralize. He couldn't afford distractions, especially not in the form of a lovesick alien teenager. As he boarded the transport with his team, he told himself it was for the best. She'd find some local boy her own age and forget all about him in a Few months he'd be gone from this backwater planet onto the next crisis, the next battlefield he never expected. To see Ionra again 5 years passed like a cosmic blink. Captain Rex Thorne stood on the bridge of the GFS Invictus, watching as the familiar orb of Axion grew larger in the view screen. He hadn't expected to return to this dusty outpost, but the insurgency had evolved into a full-blown civil war, and command had decided his experience with the region made him the ideal choice to lead the peacekeeping force, entering orbit in 5 minutes. Captain, his navigation officer reported. Thorne nodded, his mind drifting back to his previous mission here. He'd successfully neutralized the immediate threat, but clearly the underlying tensions had only festered in his absence. He wondered briefly what had become of that strange silver-haired girl who'd followed him around like a lovesick puppy. What was her name? Onra, probably married off to some local by now with a brood of orange-skinned children. The thought brought an unexpected twinge of something not regret exactly. He'd done the right thing pushing her away. She'd been a child with a crush on a uniform, nothing more. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the surface. His communications officer interrupted. It's the colonial governor. He's requesting your presence at an emergency council meeting immediately upon landing. Acknowledged. Tell him I'll be there. 2 hours later, Thorne found himself in a significantly upgraded colonial headquarters. The ramshackle building he remembered had been replaced by a sleek structure of glass and steel, a testament to Ashien's growing importance as a strategic outpost. The council chamber was filled with representatives from both the human colonists and the native actionites, the tension between them palpable. The colonial governor, a stern-faced woman who'd replaced the sweaty administrator Thorne remembered, greeted him with a firm handshake. Captain Thorne, thank you for coming so promptly. The situation has deteriorated significantly since your last visit, so I've been briefed, Thorne replied. The insurgents now control nearly half the planet. They prefer to be called the Ashien Liberation Front now. A cool melodic voice interjected. Thorne turned toward the sound and felt his breath catch. Standing at the far end of the table was a woman who could only be described as striking, tall, and live with the distinctive orange skin of an Axionite. She wore a form-fitting diplomatic uniform that accentuated every curve of her body. Her silvery hair was pulled back in an elaborate braid, revealing high cheekbones and those unmistakable eyes, the color of the morning sky but now sharp with intelligence and something harder to define. It took him a moment to recognize her. Yanra. A slight smile curved her full lips. Captain Thorne, it's been a long time. The governor looked between them. You two know each other? We've met, Yanra said smoothly, during the captain's previous assignment here. Thorne couldn't stop staring. Gone was the awkward, eager girl who trailed after him like a shadow. In her place stood a confident, poised woman who held herself with the assurance of someone accustomed to command. Milan is our chief negotiator with the ALF, the governor explained. She's been instrumental in maintaining what little dialogue we have with them. I see. Thorne managed, still trying to reconcile the sophisticated diplomat with the lovesick teenager he remembered, and indeed the meeting proceeded with various officials briefing him on the current situation. Throughout it all, Thorne found his gaze repeatedly drawn to Ionra. She participated actively in the discussion, her insight sharp and her knowledge of the conflict comprehensive. When she spoke, everyone listened, including him. After the meeting concluded, Thorne deliberately lingered, watching as Ionra gathered her data pads. When the room had emptied except for the two of them, he approached her. You've changed, he said simply. She looked up at him, those bright eyes assessing him coolly. People tend to do that over time, Captain. It suits you, he admitted. Diplomacy. Does it surprise you? There was a hint of challenge in her voice. That the lovesick kid grew up to be something more than you expected. Thorne winced at the accuracy of her assessment. I deserved that. Yes, you did. She straightened, facing him directly. I've grown up, Captain. Now it's your turn to prove a man's word means something. The echo of his own harsh words from 5 years ago hit him like a physical blow. I said we'd talk when you grew up, he acknowledged. So you did. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the subtle exotic fragrance of her skin. And here I am. Thorne felt an unexpected heat rising within him. This was not the innocent girl he dismissed so casually. This was a woman, confident, intelligent, and undeniably attractive. I have a briefing to attend, she said, breaking the moment, but perhaps we could continue this conversation over dinner. There's a lot you should know about the current situation that wasn't covered in the meeting. Dinner, Thorne repeated, finding himself oddly off balance. Yes. That would be helpful. Excellent. She brushed past him, the brief contact sending an electric jolt through his body. My quarters, 2,000 hours. I prefer privacy for sensitive discussions. As she walked away, Thorne couldn't help but watch the graceful sway of her hips. He'd Faced down draconian warlords and vegan death squads without flinching, but somehow the prospect of dinner with Ione Raylan made his heart race like a raw recruit's. What the hell had he gotten himself into? Thorn arrived at Yanra's quarters precisely at 2000 hours a bottle of rare Terran whiskey in hand. He changed from his formal uniform into more casual attire, black tactical pants and a fitted gray shirt that did little to hide his muscular physique. Force of habit had him scanning the corridor before knocking on her door. It slid open to reveal Yanra in his simple yet elegant dress of deep blue that complemented her orange skin beautifully. Her silver hair fell loose around her shoulders, catching the light with every movement. "Captain," she greeted him with a slight smile. "Right on time." "Military precision," he replied, offering the bottle. "I thought you might appreciate a taste of Earth." She accepted it with a nod of thanks. "I've developed quite an appreciation for human culture over the years. Please come in." Her quarters were spacious and tastefully appointed, with large windows overlooking the colony and the wild Axionian landscape beyond. A small table was set for two with what appeared to be mix of human and Axionian cuisine. "Impressive view," Thorn commented. Moving to the window, from this height he could see the perimeter defenses he had helped establish 5 years ago, now expanded and reinforced. "I find it helps to see both sides," Yanra said, coming to stand beside him. "The colony and the wilderness, it reminds me of what we're fighting for." Thorn glanced at her. "And what exactly is that balance?" She turned to pour 2 glasses of the whiskey. "A way for my people and yours to coexist without one dominating the other." She handed him a glass and their fingers brushed momentarily. Thorn felt that same electric jolt from earlier to balance. Then he said, raising his glass. They clinked glasses and drank. Yanra didn't flinch at the strong liquor, another sign of how much she'd changed. As they moved to the table and began their meal, the conversation flowed more easily than Thorn had expected. Yanra was well informed about galactic politics and military strategy, asking insightful questions about his mission since they'd last met. "You've been keeping tabs on me," he observed after she referenced a classified operation on Proxima 4. Yanra's smile was enigmatic. "Let's just say I made it my business to know everything about the men who told me to grow up." "And did you like what you learned?" "I found it educational." She took another sip of whiskey. "Your reputation as a tactical genius is well deserved. The Proxima operation was particularly impressive." Thorn studied her face, trying to read behind the diplomatic mask. "Enough small talk, Yanra. You didn't invite me here to discuss my service record." Her expression sobered. "No, I didn't." She set it down, her glass and leaned forward. "What I'm about to tell you isn't known to the colonial governor or anyone else in the administration." Thorn's instincts sharpened. "I'm listening." "The Axionian Liberation Front isn't what it appears to be," she said quietly. "The insurgency began as a legitimate movement for native rights, but it's been co-opted by something far more dangerous." "What kind of dangerous? Are we talking about?" "The kind that involves syndicate weapons and draconian military advisors." Her eyes held his. "Someone wants Ashian destabilized, and they're using my people's grievances to do it." Thorn cursed under his breath. The syndicate was a notorious criminal organization, and the Draconians, well, he had personal history with them. If they were involved, this was no longer a simple civil conflict. "How do you know this?" B asked. "Because I've been working as a double agent for the past 3 years." Yanra replied calmly. "The governor thinks I'm just a negotiator. The ALF leadership believes I'm sympathetic to their cause. In reality, I've been gathering intelligence for galactic security." Thorn sat back, reassessing everything he thought he knew about her. "That's a dangerous game you're playing." "I learned from the best," she said with a hint of her old admiration. "You showed me that sometimes you have to take risks for what you believe, and I don't recall teaching you to become a spy," he said dryly. "You taught me more than you realize, Captain." Her gaze was intense. "Those few days you were here, they changed the course of my life." The admission hung between them, charged with unspoken emotions. Thorn cleared his throat. "So why tell me this now?" "Because I've discovered something critical." She activated a small holographic projector on the table. A 3D map of the planet appeared with a location in the northern mountains highlighted. "The Draconians have established a base here disguised as an ALF stronghold. They're planning something big, something that could throw this entire sector into chaos." "What exactly?" "I don't know yet. That's why I need your help." She looked at him directly. "I need to infiltrate that base, but I can't do it alone." Thorn studied the holographic map, his tactical mind already analyzing approach vectors and defensive capabilities. "This isn't a two-person job, Yanra. This is a full special ops mission. We can't risk a large force. The moment Gals or the colonial military makes a move, the Draconians will know they've been compromised." She leaned forward. "But 2 People could slip in undetected, especially if they have a convincing cover. What kind of cover do you have in mind? Her smile was both challenging and seductive. I've established myself as someone sympathetic to the ALF cause but not fully committed. Recently I've let it be known that I've become involved with a human officer, someone I'm trying to bring to our side. Thorn raised an eyebrow. Let me guess, I'm the lucky officer. You're perfect for it, she said. Your reputation, your history with this planet. If word got out that the famous Captain Thorn had been seduced by an Axionian diplomat, that I was feeding you misinformation and gradually winning you over to our cause, it would be a major propaganda victory for the ALF. Thorn finished, and give us access to places no human military officer could normally go. Exactly. She reached across the table and placed her hand over his. It would mean posing as lovers convincingly. Thorn felt the warmth of her touch spreading through him. He looked at her hand on his orange against an alien yet so familiar. Then he looked up at her face, at those bright eyes that had once gazed at him with innocent adoration and now held a woman's knowing challenge. This is a dangerous game you're proposing, he said quietly. Life is dangerous, Captain. Her fingers intertwined with his. But some risks are worth taking. Thorn knew he should refuse. This wasn't a sanctioned operation. If they were caught, the diplomatic fallout would be catastrophic, not to mention the very personal complications of pretending to be romantically involved with a woman who had once been infatuated with him, a woman who now stirred feelings in him he hadn't expected. But if she was right about draconian involvement, when do we start? He heard himself ask. A yonderous smile was triumphant. We already have. There are eyes everywhere in this colony, Captain. By now word of your visit to my quarters will be spreading through both official and insurgent channels. Thorn glanced around, suddenly aware of how this scene would appear to an outside observer. The intimate dinner, the whiskey, the two of them sitting close together, hands now entwined. You set this up before I even agreed, he realized. I calculated the odds of your acceptance as favorable, she replied with a hint of mischief. You never could resist a mission with high stakes. You've become quite the strategist, he said, not sure whether to be impressed or annoyed. I had an excellent teacher. She stood still, holding his hand, and drew him to his feet. Now shall we make our exit convincing for our audience? Before Thorn could respond, she stepped closer, eliminating the space between them. Her free hand came up to rest against his chest, and he could feel the heat of her through his shirt. Iandanra, he began, his voice rougher than he intended. For our audience, she whispered, her breath warm against his neck. We need to be convincing. Thorn hesitated only a moment before his tactical mind took over. If they were being watched, their cover needed to be flawless. He slid his arm around her waist, drawing her closer. How's this for convincing? He murmured and lowered his mouth to hers. The kiss was meant to be performative, a show for whoever might be monitoring them, but the moment their lips met, something electric passed between them. Ionra's body melted against his, her hands sliding up to tangle in his short hair. Thorn found himself responding with unexpected intensity, his arms tightening around her slender form. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing heavily. Thorn saw a surprise in Ionra's eyes, and something else, something that mirrored the heat coursing through his own veins. That was, she began convincing, he finished, his voice husky. A slight smile curved her lips. Very. She stepped back, composing herself with visible effort. You should go. We've given them enough to talk about for one night. Thorn nodded, his tactical mind reasserting control. When do we make our move? There's a gathering at the ALF sympathizers compound tomorrow night. I'll introduce you as my special friend. Her eyes glinted with mischief. Where's something less military? I'll do my best to look appropriately seduced, he replied dryly. At the door she stopped him with a hand on his arm. Rex, she said, using his first name for the first time. Thank you for trusting me. The sincerity in her voice caught him off guard for a moment. He glimpsed the earnest girl she had once been beneath the sophisticated woman she'd become. Don't make me regret it, he said, but his tone was gentle. As he walked back to his quarters, Thorn found himself touching his lips, still feeling the imprint of her kiss. This mission had just become considerably more complicated. The ALF sympathizers compound was a sprawling collection of structures on the outskirts of the colony, where the ordered human architecture gave way to the more organic designs favored by the Axonites. Thorn felt distinctly out of place in his civilian clothes, dark pants, and a deep blue shirt that Ira had sent to his quarters with a note that read, to match my eyes. He spotted her immediately upon arrival, her silver hair gleaming under the soft lights. She wore a dress that hugged her curves before flowing gracefully to the floor, the color shifting between blue and violet with her movements. Several Axionites surrounded her, but her face lit up when she saw him and she excused herself to glide toward him. You clean up nicely. Captain, she murmured, sliding her arm through his. I feel naked without my sidearm, he admitted quietly. You're not entirely unarmed, she replied, pressing something small and hard into his palm. Emergency beacon if things go sideways activated. He pocketed it smoothly, expecting trouble always. Her smile was dazzling as she led him deeper into the gathering. Now remember, you're the battle-hardened captain who's beginning to question his loyalties after falling for an exotic Axionite. Beauty doesn't sound like much of a stretch, he said, surprising himself with the admission. Ianra's step faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. Careful, Captain, you're supposed to be falling for me, not actually falling. Before he could respond, they were approached by a tall, regal Axionite male with elaborate facial markings that Thorn recognized as signs of high status among their people. Era, the male greeted her, his voice deep and melodious. This must be the human you've told us about. Counselor Naren, she replied with a respectful nod. Yes, this is Captain Rex Thorn, Rex Counselor. Naren is one of our most respected elders. Thorn extended his hand in the human manner, but was prepared when Naren instead pressed his palm flat against Thorn's chest, the traditional Axionite greeting between equals. Your reputation precedes you, Captain, Naren said, his bright green eyes assessing, not all of it favorable to our cause. Reputations can be misleading, Thorn replied smoothly, and perspectives can change indeed. Naren's gaze flicked to Ianra. And what has changed yours? Thorn allowed his eyes to linger on Ianra's face. Let's just say I've been given reason to see Axion in a new light. Naren made a sound that might have been amusement. She is persuasive, our Ianra, though I confess I never expected her to succeed in this particular diplomatic mission. The counselor was skeptical when I mentioned my interest in you. Mora explained, her fingers tightening on Thorn's arm and warning. I still am, Naren said bluntly. 5 years ago, Captain, you led raids against our people that resulted in many deaths. I led precision strikes against insurgent camps that were attacking civilian targets, Thorn corrected, feeling a flare of genuine anger. I never targeted non-combatants. A matter of perspective, as you said. Naren's expression hardened. One man's terrorist is another's freedom fighter. The tension between them was palpable. Yandra stepped slightly between them, her diplomatic training evident in her smooth intervention. Counselor, Captain Thorn has agreed to hear our side. That's a significant step for someone of his position. Perhaps we might focus on building bridges rather than rehashing old conflicts. Naren studied them both for a long moment, then inclined his head. As always, your wisdom exceeds your years. Ianra, Captain, I look forward to further discussions. As the counselor moved away, Thorn felt Ianra relaxed slightly beside him. That was tense, he murmured. Naren lost family in those raids, she explained quietly, but he's also one of the moderates who believes in peaceful resolution. We need him on our side. Thorn nodded, filing the information away. Who else should I know about the woman by the fountain? Commander Sella, former military, now one of the Alf's strategic leaders, and the male speaking with her is Krell, our liaison with off-world supporters. Thorn followed her gaze, instantly recognizing the military bearing of the female Axionite. The male beside her, however, made his blood run cold. Ianra, he said, keeping his voice steady with effort. That's not an Axionite, she frowned. Krell, no, he's half Draconian, but he's been with the movement for years. That's not Krell, Thorn said with absolute certainty. That's Drex von Draconian Special Intelligence. He was responsible for the massacre on Proxima 4. Iona's eyes widen. Are you certain? I never forget a face, especially when I've been hunting for 3 years. Thorn's hand instinctively moved toward where his weapon would normally be. He's dangerous, Ianra. If he's here, this goes deeper than we thought. Before she could respond, Krell looked up and directly at them. His reptilian eyes narrowed. Issa, and Thorn knew instantly that he'd been recognized. We've been made mean, he muttered. We need to leave now. We can't. Ianra hissed. That would only confirm his suspicions. We need to brazen it out. She was right, but Thorn's every instinct screamed danger. If he calls me out, then we'll deal with it, she said firmly. Trust me. The Draconian was already moving toward them, his movements fluid and predatory. Your split-second decision, turning to face Thorn. Kiss me, she whispered urgently. Now. Thorn didn't hesitate. He pulled her into his arms, one hand cradling the back of her head as he claimed her mouth with convincing passion. Yandra responded instantly, her body arching against his, her arms winding around his neck. The kiss deepened, and for a moment Thorn forgot about the Draconian, forgot about their mission, forgot about everything except the feel of Ianra in his arms when they Finally broke apart breathless. The Draconian was standing a few feet away watching them with cold calculation. Well, he said, his voice a sibilant hiss. Captain Thorn, this is unexpected. Thorn kept his arm around Yanra's waist, his expression carefully neutral. Do I know you? We've never been formally introduced, the Draconian replied, but your reputation is legendary. Among my people I am Krell, advisor to the Alpha. Pleasure, Thorn said, the lie bitter on his tongue. Indeed. Krell's gaze shifted to Yanra. I must say, my dear, when you spoke of bringing a human officer to our cause, I never imagined you aimed so high. Yanra smiled, a perfect blend of satisfaction and secretiveness. I've always believed in challenging myself. Clearly Krell's reptilian eyes assessed them both. And you, Captain? What brings a decorated galactic peacekeeping force officer to consort with those his government considers terrorists? It was the moment of truth. Thorn knew that his answer could make or break their cover. He looked down at Yanra, allowing genuine emotion to show in his eyes. Let's just say I found someone worth questioning. My assumptions for Krell made a skeptical sound. Love how human we're, a sentimental species, Thorn replied with a shrug. It's our weakness and our strength, so I've observed. Krell's smile didn't reach his eyes. Well, this is fortuitous. We're planning a gathering at our northern compound next week, much more intimate than this public affair. Perhaps you'd both care to join us. We could use a military perspective on certain strategic matters. The northern compound, exactly where Yanra had indicated the Draconian base was located. It was almost too perfect. We'd be honored, Yanra replied before Thorn could speak. Wouldn't we, darling? Thorn forced a smile. Absolutely. Excellent. Krell's gaze lingered on Thorn. Until then, Captain, do enjoy the party. As the Draconian glided away, Thorn felt Yandra's hand tighten on his arm. That was too easy, she whispered. He doesn't believe us, Thorn agreed. He's setting a trap or testing us. Yanra's eyes followed Krell across the room. Either way, we've got our invitation into the lion's den, Thorn muttered. Dragon's den. Technically, she replied with a hint of her old humor. Despite the danger, Thorn found himself smiling. You're either very brave or very foolish, Ion. I learned from the best, she said, her eyes meeting his with an intensity that made his heart race. You once told me to come back when I'd grown up. Well, here I am, about to walk into a Draconian stronghold with the most wanted men on their hit list. Grown up enough for you to challenge in. Her voice was unmistakable, but so was something else, a vulnerability beneath a bravado that reminded him of the girl she'd once been. More than enough, he said softly, and meant it. For the rest of the evening they maintained their cover, mingling with the Alf sympathizers while keeping a careful eye on Krell. Thorn was acutely aware of Yanra beside him, the warmth of her hand on his arm, the scent of her hair when she leaned close to whisper information about various attendees, the brush of her body against his as they navigated the crowded room. By the time they left, the pretense of attraction had blurred dangerously with reality. In the relative privacy of the transport back to the colonial headquarters, Yanra finally dropped her diplomatic mask, her expression troubled. If that truly is Draxorn, we're in more danger than I anticipated, she said quietly. His presence confirms Draconian High Command involvement, which means whatever they're planning goes beyond destabilizing a single colony. Thorn agreed. We need to get into that northern compound, and we will. Yander's determination was palpable, but will need to be more convincing than ever. Vor will be